Hello, and welcome to the 6th episode of my D&D Storytime. Today I'm going to be talking about my first ever player death, which I've not really had many of, mainly because a lot of my encounters aren't as dangerous as they should be. I've very rarely, like I said, I think I've only ever had 2 player character deaths, and they were both the same person. But let's just get right to it. So the first player death was in my campaign, my first legitimate campaign, the one that involved Miney and Manning and Tanner, the one that lasted, a couple months rather than a couple sessions. So if I remember correctly, they had been tasked with investigating a town that had gone quiet. There was no word from the town, and anybody they sent would not come back. So they sent these two, who at this point, they weren't high-level adventurers, but they were getting up there. I think they were like 7 or 8, level 7 or 8. And mind you, this is back before I used Milestone, so I was still using XP. So it had gone on, this campaign had gone on for a fair amount of time. But they were tasked with investigating this town and deciding, trying to figure out what happened. So they arrive, and right off the bat, they find nobody. The town's completely abandoned. They scout from a distance and find that there are undead roaming the streets and just guarding something. So they decide to be a little stealthy. So they decide they're going to sneak in. Miney was a Manakete, which is his own homebrew custom class that I came up with, and Manny was a rogue. So they decide the best course of action would be to sneak in. So they sneak in. They I think, if I recall, they had come across something that allowed them to fly. I think it may have been a magic carpet. It's been a long time, so I can't remember too specific details. But I know Miney could fly and Manny could fly. And Manny's race did not support flight, so he had to have a magic item. I just can't remember for the life of me what it was. And Miney's Manakete could fly at like 20 feet per turn. But they decided to fly in and scout out the rest of the town, trying to figure out if there are any survivors. If I recall, after they scanned the city, they discovered a magic tower and decided, a mage's tower. And they decided to investigate that because it seemed like the undead were guarding it. So they snuck in, encountered very little resistance at first. They went up a couple floors, only found nothing. But what they didn't know was there were flame skulls. I believe that's what they were called. I should have had this open, but I didn't. Flame skull. Sorry, this. They encountered this flame skull. I think there were 2 of them, and it surprised them. So it wasn't. This isn't where anybody died, so it wasn't an easy fight, but they trounced them. At this point, they had magic weapons. They had, I believe, Miney may have had a cloak of displacement, which made him almost impossible to hit. And Manny was just a well-built character. But they got up to the top of the tower where this mage was, and they fought off 2 zombie ogres, which armor class 8, hit point 85, a challenge rating of 2, so 450 XP. They fought them off easy. Then they confronted the mage, who, if I recall, gave him some plot device, like he explained what was happening in the town, stuff like that. I believe he stabbed them in the back, though. They thought he was an ally, and then he turned out to be a bad guy. They defeated him and his skeleton minotaurs, I believe. Yeah, it was skeleton minotaur and a couple skeletons that just came out of a secret room. Like I said, this is my first legitimate campaign, so I'm still not amazing at being a dungeon master, but I'm getting there. I'm not amazing now, mind you, but I'm getting better. But anyways, they decide they defeat him, and they're like, okay, well, we're going to investigate the rest of the town, see if there's any survivors. So they leave the wizard's tower and enter the city, fighting off some undead. And that's when they come across 2 zombie beholders. And for those of you who don't know, zombie beholders, basically they're not as powerful as regular beholders, but they still keep their eye rays. One of which, number 4, is their disintegration ray, which it basically what ended up happening is Manny got hit by 2 of those, because the way it works is you can either it says zombie uses a random magical ray. So you would roll a d4 and whatever you get, that's what they would fire. I believe I got disintegration ray on both of them, and they both happen to target Manny. Can't remember why. I don't know if he was dealing a lot more damage than Miney, but it wasn't like it wasn't me targeting him. It just so happened he was doing the most damage, or he was the most viable threat. 2 disintegration rays hit him, drop him to 0, and he was destroyed. He turned into a pile of gray dust, dead, just outright. Miney escaped and fled back to their home city, and this was my first player character death, but this is also the first time I had begun experimenting with player death, which I didn't want player death to be that's it, finite, you're dead. You know, there's ways to bring back people, but I wasn't sure they'd be able to. So I came up with my own homebrew what happens after you hit 0 and die. What I came up with was, I think it was a d6, 6 scenarios I had planned out. And you would roll the d6, and whatever you got is what happened. I think one was you spawn in I think it was the Shadow Realm spawn. You appear in the Shadow Realm and you have to fight off 2 shades, or shadows. Oh, I don't remember what it was. It was something shadows. And if you defeated them, you get brought back to life. I believe number 6, which is what he ended up rolling, was he was transported to a powerful NPC's home base who reconstituted his form and brought him back to life. And that was the easy one. That was, if you roll a 6, you get brought back to life. No tricks, no penalties, anything like that. Like I said, this was my first player character death. This is the first time they were the first time playing too, and last thing I wanted was them to die and lose this character. Which now, reflecting on it, if there's no danger, then there's no point in playing. Which is something I still struggle with. I don't know if I'm just bad at making encounters, but a lot of the time, I'll throw an encounter at a player or a group and think, this is actually going to be dangerous, they're going to have trouble. And then they trounce it. And I'm sitting there like, well, what am I going to do? But he got brought back to life. The campaign ended shortly after that, like maybe 2 or 3 sessions after that, because they had gotten way powerful. Because I was giving them homebrew magic items. I was giving them tons of freaking XP, so they were leveling up quickly. But I came to the conclusion that campaign needed to end, and actually the next episode will be how it ended, because it ended. I don't want to spoil anything, but I didn't want it to be just campaign over, you're done. I wanted it to have a climax, so that's what I did. So I guess that's about it for my first player character death. But for the comments, list your first death, or if you're a dungeon master, your first player character death, or if you're a player, maybe the first one you encountered, whether it be in your party or your own death. But so thanks for watching.